Hello, you're watching us here on Future Female Forward, which is India's biggest summit on gender parity. Yes, the future is here, and importantly, the future is her. Why am I talking about it? Well, because why should we leave the benefit and the equality of genders only to one gender? It's only fair that both of them participate in it. And not just is it India's largest summit on gender parity, we've been carrying on this campaign for the longest time here on CNBC-TV18, and this is a first of many that will follow. Because as a Moody's report says, that if there is gender parity in the world economy would improve by $7 trillion. Mind you, $7 trillion, it's almost 2.5 Indias being added to the world itself. On this red carpet, we will get you the most glittering voices on gender parity and gender equality. But more importantly, you should know that the star of today is you, the woman and the man who supports women in all her endeavors. And who better to start this evening off with than the MD of Nestle India himself. We have with us Suresh Narayanan. Thanks a lot, sir, for joining in. I have heard you multiple times in your conference calls, etc. And you always refer to the customer as a her. That's a strong start. And more importantly, Nestle itself, the products that you make, most of them consumed and bought by her.
Sure. Thank you, Mangalam. Thank you for having me here at this Future Female Forward Collective. Really, it's a privilege and honor for me. And yes, I think let me be very honest with you. A lot of our consumers are hers, and I think therefore it is only correct and it's only fair and it's only equitable that I begin by talking about her as the consumer, and her as the employee, and her as the future.
Well, you are talking about her as the future. So let's talk about your business itself. Can you give us a sense of what proportion of Nestle's workforce is women? And you have a new plant which is women focused as well.
Yeah, at the moment about a fourth of our workforce, 25%, are women. The Sanand plant, which is our newest plant, commissioned only late in 2021, has over 60% of the workforce as women, and I'm extremely proud of it, because one of the things that we wanted to I had a personal ambition in this as well, but a corporate ambition as well, which is overriding, is to show how women can succeed in manufacturing, just as they have succeeded in services, healthcare, and numerous other sectors.
So what is your long-term goal? 25% of your workforce currently is women. In one plant, 60%. Do you have a long-term goal as to a proportion of your workforce should be women and a proportion of your leadership should be women?
Look, ideally, I mean, at 25%, I am mildly satisfied, but not exulting, because I think there is a lot more that we can do. I look at a goal, which is what my board today is. 50% of my board of Nestle India are women, and I'm extremely proud of that. And yes, as you mentioned, 50% of the global population are women. There is $7 trillion of economic growth to be picked, and certainly I look at the promotion of gender parity and equality of opportunities, not just in emotive terms, but in pure economic terms. And I think we should understand that in decisions like this, economics must play as big a role as the other social dimensions or the equity dimensions that we talk about.
You know, and that's a very important point that you raised. In fact, you preempted my next question itself. You spoke about it being an economic imperative more than just an emotive imperative. So just wanted to understand, from a gender perspective, has there been any difference in performance that you've seen in men and women? Has there been a chance that, you know, women have actually outperformed men? Because at home, definitely women outperform men. At workplace, do you see those skills coming to the fore as well?
Look, let me give you a few statistics. In the last couple of years, almost 50 to 60% of our intake of management trainees from the top business schools, from the top tech schools in this country are women. Our factories have today young women executives who are growing and who are progressing their careers. I have a fourth of my sales force as women, and these are also in fairly specialized disciplines. So the fact of the matter is that the talent pool has a lot of women today. And I think it's only the very foolish or the very myopic who are going to overlook this fact and say that I will still do what I did 10 years ago.
All right, and let's come closer to home. What do you think ma'am has taught you in your life that, which was incomplete before you got married to her?
Look, my life, in a sense, my upbringing has been kind of nurtured by women. My two grandmothers at home, my wife and my daughter and my assistant in the office, they're all women. And I think what they bring to bear in my life is a deep sense of purpose, a deep sense of compassion, and a strong sense of determination, because that's what these women have taught me in my own life.
Right, Mr. Narayanan, I've always seen you sporting the Nestle lapel, but here I'd like to present to you the Future Female Forward lapel as well, so that you wear this every time, every place that you go, you carry the message of Future Female Forward as well.
I promise you, Mangalam, it will be there on my lapel, next to the Nestle one, because this is something that is my, not only my corporate identity, but also something that I hold very close to my heart. And this, of course, is something that is an essential part of my life, and indeed of the corporate life of Nestle. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mr. Narayanan. With that, we will go across to Ashmit, who's standing by with another important guest. Ashmit, take it away.
Right, Mangalam, glad I could join here as part of FFF, Future Female Forward, and dare I say, Mangalam, that pink suit is looking really good on you, you're looking dapper. But let's change subjects here. Talking about the three words, Future Female Forward, they represent change, or change that is coming, that is already on the way. And what better way to demonstrate that change than, in fact, to look at the two members of the armed forces who are with me, Major Tiwari, Flight Lieutenant Shanbhog. Thank you so much for joining us. Representing a breaking of the glass ceiling in terms of representation of women in the armed forces. Major Tiwari, let me come to you. You were viral. I remember members of my family were sharing pictures of you as a part of your operation when you went to Turkey as a part of Operation Dost. What does this mean to be a part of the armed forces as a woman in terms of the challenges that you had to face in getting here?
Actually, I'll say that Army is very accommodative for its women officer. So they have taken care of my comfort, and me being the only lady officer in the 99 member team, it was not challenging at all. I'll say I took it as an adventure for myself, and as I was facing the challenges along with the troops, so it was kind of an adventure only, and we were facing it all together. And I enjoyed working with my team, and we put our heart and soul to treat all the patients of the Turkey and to provide assistance as much as possible to the best of our capabilities.
Flight Lieutenant Shanbhog, let me come to you. From our conversation just a few moments ago, you mentioned that you fly the MiG-29, which is one of the frontline fighters that we have in the Indian Air Force. Not very often have we seen women fighting and being a part of these frontline aircrafts, the fighter jets that we're speaking of. What has changed now? What has changed that allowed you that room to, in fact, grow into a fighter pilot jet that we know that you are?
All right. To answer your question, I believe the major thing that has seen a shift in the recent past is the mindset of the people. Even if you look at history, historically, there have been ample amount of examples wherein women have played pivotal roles in many of the combat situations, even in our country. But it's only now that the generation has grown or evolved to an extent wherein this has gotten normalized. That is, women playing key roles in combat, in the armed forces, has become a commonplace thing now. And same is the case with the Indian Air Force, which is providing opportunities for women in all of its branches. There is no branch in the Indian Air Force which does not allow or accommodate women to be part of. So I think it's that.
So we've met Major Tiwari from the Army. We've also met Flight Lieutenant Shanbhog from the Air Force. Let's go across to our Navy, which has also opened doors to women. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely having you share your time with us as a part of FFF. Tell us in a few words what it means for women to be now accommodated in that space of combat roles. This was a fiercely debated issue. But now we've seen the light of day. This issue has seen the light of day, and we actively see more women coming forth. Tell us in your words, your journey in getting to this position.
Okay, first of all, I would like to tell you that I'm a Naval Air Operations Officer, and women have been in this branch from quite a few years, more than 15 years. And also recently the Navy has also inducted women pilots. So combat roles is not anything new for the Navy. The women in the air operations branch and the women pilots. Both of these roles for the long-range maritime patrol aircraft and short-range maritime patrol aircraft, both are considered as combat roles.
Major Tiwari, let me come to you. That when we're discussing this, when we're seeing three examples here across the three armed forces. Do you see an impact of this? Like, for instance, when you had commanders?
Yes, an impact, and seeing all the young lady officers from all three armed forces. So I'll say it did put an impact, and even me as a younger, when I see myself as a younger one, I did get motivated seeing women officers. So maybe me and other officers are also portraying themselves as the motivating factor for the young generation to join army.
I think it's quite inspiring, quite motivating, in fact, under a statement to say so. But speaking of, in fact, motivating and inspiring stories, my colleague, let's go across to Manglam. And he too also has with us a guest who also has an equally inspiring story. Manglam, over to you.
Well, you know, an equally inspiring story. Any sports person is inspiring, but if that sports person is a woman and of a sport which is not as popular as cricket in India, it's a tougher journey, and she's managed it. We have with us Monica Saxena, who's the captain of the Indian women's polo team. I mean, there's a game which is difficult. On top of that, you do it while you're sitting on a horse, and you do it when, you know, the sport itself is a minority, in that women is a minority. I mean, how do you do that? That's triple salutes to you, Monica.
Yeah, exactly. Polo is the only sport in the world where men and women play together. And I have played with men against men, and it's the most dangerous and one of the riskiest sports I ever come across. And it's very challenging, and you need to work very, very hard than you can imagine. You have to be a super rider. It's not just riding. It's a different sport than riding. Polo is a different sport in itself. And thanks to Indian Army that I am here in front of you.
So you are part of the armed forces. You are playing for the nation, and you are playing with gender equality, because this is the only sport, like you said, where men and women play together. Multiple salutes once again. Is there any message that you'd like to give to all the little girls who are watching?
Absolutely. For all the girls, give it a go. I think this is the only place where you can beat the men, and you should do your best in that.
Well, I shouldn't say that this is the only place where you can beat the men. There are multiple places. And our next guest that we have with us, you know, has beaten men at multiple places and is leading. We don't need any introduction for Naina Lal Kidwai. Thank you so much. We are talking about future female forward. But for us, you are female forward in the past, you are female forward in the present, and you seem to be future female forward as well. What's the secret here?
Well, I think it's all about recognizing that women belong in every space in our country, and we have arrived, and we should and absolutely will play on an equal and even playing field.
You know, a lot of women are watching you here. They would want to know from your experience some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you knock them right in the face?
You know, I don't think there's any point going so far back in the 1980s as when I joined. And I'm very happy to say that we've come a long way from then. But even then, many of us, like myself, found our space. And frankly, it wasn't such a big struggle, because we worked in environments which we chose, because they were by and large friendly, meritocracies, and enabled us to flourish and develop. And I think the banking sector stood out as an example, and you've seen that play out the way it has. The good news now is many other sectors, the IT tech sectors, even companies in the FMCG world, which in my time said they wouldn't hire women, now have women at the helm and as CEOs. So we should celebrate where we are now and look forward to more engagement, and let's do what is right in terms of creating an environment where women flourish and can rise to their full potential.
Inspiring words as always, and also words of a lot of hope, because you're talking about multiple sectors who are now looking at women leadership seriously and flourishing too. If you could give us a sense of where do you think the paradigm shift happened, and what is it that happened in recent past that, you know, made things a lot better than what they were, even though we have a lot of ground to cover still?
Yeah. So I think one big change was regulation, and I was always of a school which didn't like quotas, but I do believe I was wrong there, because the quota we set for directorships of women on our listed companies really helped. So we are up at 22% now, and that step change has happened only because of the requirement that there be a woman on every board. And frankly, one woman is not enough. The guideline is 2, and I would think we should move to where the world is, which is 1/3. But this was one very important step. So regulation helps where nothing else is changing and happening. I think a second paradigm shift happened where the world, and it typically started offshore, I'm sad to say, but investor communities began to ask, how many women do you have in senior leadership? What are your strategies on diversity? And the enlightened companies, those that had foreign institutional investors, had to answer these questions and recognize they had to do something about it. So we got that one big change as well that came driven by foreign capital, driven by foreign best practice. And then for those of our companies that began to do it and realize that, hey, this makes good business sense, it's actually helping us move along. And across the board now, you see companies that have embraced diversity are the companies that are performing best on the stock markets and are acclaimed as amongst the best employers as well. So it's a win-win for everyone.
It is a win-win. Cheers to that. And I would like to present you with a label of Future Female Forward. This is something that you can wear and you can promote everywhere. You know, one final question before we let you go, not taking much of your time. You said that there were a bunch of decisions that took place which led to this sort of equality, or rather a step towards equality. Do you think there is one pressing issue that needs to be taken care of right now? Is there a change that could make things even better from where they are right now?
So I think many companies that will tick the box, and you'll see from a FICCI survey, which we will be discussing today, also stating how companies have the right policies, 90% in fact in this case, whether it's on sexual harassment or employment of women, have the right policies. What we need to make sure is that beyond the tick box exercise, the environment has to be one where women can flourish. So the culture of the organization needs to also reflect what the company believes it is doing.
Thanks a lot for that, ma'am. Enjoy your evening. With that, we'll toss it across to Ashmit, who's standing with another special guest.
Manglam, thanks a lot for that engaging conversation. Ms. Kidwai, of course, being at the cutting edge of corporate India. But we also have with us Ms. Chatterjee. She's at the cutting edge of women empowerment at the ground level. Ms. Chatterjee, firstly, let me begin by congratulating you in advance. Why we'll save that for a little later. But in terms of the work that you've done, self-employment, that has been the thrust area of Seva. Tell us in a few words what this journey has meant in terms of the changes that you've seen at the ground level, in women at the ground level feeling empowered and feeling entrepreneurial in terms of taking decisions financially that have an impact.
Thank you very much. We're delighted to be here with my colleagues Sudesh Ben and Hitakshi Ben. The Self-Employed Women's Association is India's and perhaps the world's largest trade union, national union, of 25 lakh informal women workers. But we're also a movement of cooperatives and collectives, more than 5,000 from village level right up to Seva Bank, which is the world's first urban women's cooperative bank. I think very early on, our founder Ila Bhatt realized that if women are to move steadily towards their economic empowerment and self-reliance, then it can only be done through the joint action of union and cooperatives or collectives, which are basically collective businesses of women, collective enterprises. And that is why we have been on this journey. This year we celebrate 50 years, and we have 150 women's collective enterprises, some tiny businesses, some medium-sized, and some quite large, like Seva Bank. I think what we've learned is that if women have to come out of poverty and move towards self-reliance and economic empowerment, then they need security of work and income, food security, and social security or social protection. At least healthcare, childcare, insurance, pension, and a roof over their heads, a house with basic infrastructure. So that has been our journey, and we've realized, as our women say, there are two sides of the coin. Work security without social security makes no sense. So we need both for our enterprises to grow and thrive. And one last thing, we feel it is these enterprises of women which are powering local economies and ultimately the national economy and our GDP. It's just that they're not recognized. So we're delighted to be here.
Well, it's a small effort in terms of recognizing the efforts that you're putting in on the ground. A quick word, if you can introduce us to one of your colleagues and describe for the benefit of our viewers what this journey has been for them at the ground level.
Sure, and it would be great if she herself could speak if you have the time. This is Hitakshi Ben. She's from the Adivasi Gamit community from Lakhali village of Tapi district, a very remote village in the forests of South Gujarat. आप दो शब्द बोलेंगे आपके बारे में, आपका क्या काम क्या है? गुजराती में बोलो तो चलेगा.
મારું નામ ગામિત હિતાક્ષીબેન છે. હું ગુજરાતના તાપી જિલ્લાના લખાલી ગામથી આવું છું અને મેઘા મંડળી કરીએ અમારી એક તાપી જિલ્લામાં મંડળી છે સેવા તરફથી, એમાં હું આગેવાન તરીકે સેવાનું કામ કરું છું.
I am a leader of Megha Cooperative, a grassroots cooperative of women farmers. She didn't mention, but 1,000 women farmers have been organized, and this is their own collective enterprise in this remote area of South Gujarat, which is hardly even remembered, but their work is powering the local district, Tapi district.
I'll just ask you one final question, ma'am, that in this journey, you mentioned it's been 50 years that you've been a part of this. This journey has gone on for 50 years. A quick word in terms of perhaps an impetus that is perhaps needed from the policy front or from the government front in terms of taking this agenda and this conversation forward, women at the grassroots.
Absolutely. 2-3 things. There's ease of business for the corporates, but what about us? Those of us who work decentralized grassroots enterprises. We want simpler regulations, we want ease of doing business, and we also want recognition of the care economy which women are involved with, which includes childcare, without which women's economic empowerment is impossible. And I'd love it if she could just say her name. I know we are out of time. सुदेश बहन अपना नाम और काम जल्दी से बता.
मेरा नाम सुदेश है, मैं दिल्ली में ही रहने वाली हूँ. मैं अपना काम कामगार महिलाएं हैं जो मकान वगैरह बनाते हैं और जो घर में काम वाम करती हैं. हम कामगार महिलाएं हैं जो हमारा काम किसी को दिखता नहीं था. अब सेवा से जुड़ने के बाद हमारा काम
अब रिकग्निशन मिल रहा है और आज शाम उसी डायरेक्शन में एक स्मॉल इम्पेटस है जहाँ पे वी ट्राइंग टू रिकॉग्नाइज द वर्क दैट इज बीइंग डन. मिस चैटर्जी, thank you so much for joining us, for taking out time. आप हमारे साथ live join किए. But on that note, let's in fact continue this conversation. Let's go across to some more impact women that we've seen, women making an impact at the social level, at the financial level. And in fact, Manglam is joined by yet another such icon. Manglam, over to you.
Yes, I have with me Jayanti Dalmia, who is the president of FLOW, which is FICCI Ladies Organization. Thanks a lot for joining in. Just one question before I toss it back to Ashmit. India has a $5 trillion GDP economy target. How much do you think will come from women going forward, and what are the steps you're taking for that?
We at FICCI Ladies Organization, we work towards women empowerment. That's our main work that we do. And what I feel and what I've read also is that the GDP of India's economy can increase by 18%. That is $770 billion if the woman force comes in labor, in the labor force. So that is, a very, very big figure in future. And these figures are from Niti Aayog policy research and all. And also World Bank has projected this. So, and we are doing a lot of work in this field by promoting startups, by promoting international trade, by having different kinds of workshops, events for women on financial literacy, on business, on digital literacy in all three status for small, medium and large enterprises. So that's what our work is entailing.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Dalmia, for joining in. You have spoken about women empowerment and women leadership. With that, I'll toss it right across to Ashmit, who has with him one such powerful woman. Ashmit.
Right, Manglam, thank you so much for, in fact, tossing that across to me. Joining me now is Ms. Smriti Irani herself. Ma'am, this evening here, as far as Future Female Forward is concerned, is an effort in terms of recognizing some of the major steps and leaps that women have taken that have made an impact. You yourself, as a part of your journey in political growth, have in fact broken the ceiling and broken into a world which has largely been dominated by men. But this is an interesting journey that you've had yourself as well. Let's begin by talking about you as a part of this Future Female Forward journey.
It will be a very long interview. I think that if you want the future to be forward, you need to ensure that the female component is an equal part of that forward-looking journey. I am just a speck amongst millions of women in the country who have potential. I was blessed to get multiple opportunities in two distinct fields of media and in politics. I was also extremely, I think, blessed because irrespective of the opportunities I received, I also met with a modicum of success. I think that today, in an era where the government has helped transition under the Prime Minister's leadership, the entire agenda around advocacy of women's rights, and he has established very firmly that gone are the times when we look at the female issue and look at them from a perspective of let's empower women, as though women are in need of always being rescued. The fact that women in our country have the potential to lead solutions, have the potential to transform many aspects of our socio-economic life is why the Prime Minister coined the phrase women-led development. And as a woman, as a female citizen of this country, I'm particularly delighted that on the table of the G20, now women's issues are no longer relegated to the sidelines. We have them resolutely placed as a main agenda of the G20. That being India's contribution fills me with great joy and pride.
Then you've in fact preempted my very next question, that as a part of these ongoing conversations that we have at the big table or the high table to speak of, now we're looking at this conversation, of course, traveling to the G20 at a time when India is leading the presidency. What can this presidency do for this journey?
What is sweetly complex about it is that it has been brought to the main table, as you say, by a male Prime Minister. That we have had a female head of state before is known to many. I think that when the Prime Minister speaks about our efforts at the digital economy, he speaks about it from keeping women at the center of it. When he speaks about governance, he speaks about a collected effort on behalf of every department of the government to ensure women are at the very center of governance agenda. And I also feel that though it is a government or an administrative narrative, it has steeped and become a social narrative now. And I think that is one of the greatest high points of the Prime Minister's leadership when it comes to advocacy of women's rights.
One final question, ma'am. From a fundamental standpoint, what can we do? What can the government do in terms of giving that impetus for this change that we're beginning to see at the ground level? Just as an example, moments back you had a word with Ms. Chatterjee from Seva. She mentioned that how we speak of ease of doing business, perhaps that conversation also needs to travel in terms of financially enabling women at the ground level.
I think that when you talk about the Prime Minister's agenda, it was enunciated well in the budget recently that over 40 departments now have over 2,20,000 crores of only gender spend. Speaks volume about the Prime Minister's and the government's agenda and a financial affirmation of the same. I also believe that the budget speech of the Finance Minister began with the collective of self-help groups, which is the grassroots power. We are the first government to ensure that there's an affirmative action in procurement through the GEM portal. All PSUs have been mandated that at least the 3% spend and buyouts have to be from women-led enterprises. The fact that self-help groups, which tantamount to around 8 million of them, have close to 90 million women who participate in economic activity at the grassroots. And the government of India under Narendra Modi's leadership has ensured that they have received till now 6 lakh crore rupees. Speaks volume that the government is not limited to pronouncement of policy but backs it with fiscal action.
Fair enough, ma'am. Ms. Irani, thank you so much for joining us and for gracing the occasion. That, of course, was the Union Minister, Ms. Smriti Irani, joining us and giving us a small teaser as to what to expect as a part of Future Female Forward. On that note, that's it from the red carpet. We're slipping into a very short break, but do stay tuned. We will be tuning into and getting you live coverage from Future Female Forward, the largest one-of-its-kind conclave that celebrates gender diversity, that celebrates this forward movement, and as the title itself says, Future Female Forward. On that note, slipping into a very short break, we'll just be back in a few moments. Stay tuned.